This is Joshua Hart here for Seconds Out. Delighted today to be joined by Matchroom CEO of Boxing, Frank Smith. Frank, thank you very much for your time today. And how is everything?
All good, mate. All good. You said Fratch Smith because you got Carl Froch's book in the background, so you had it on your
Yes.
mind.
Yeah, that could be the reason. But regardless, delighted to be here today with Frank Smith and not Fratch Smith. I don't know where that came from. But let's dive straight into things. Saturday night, you're in Philadelphia for another Jaron Boots Ennis fight night. A tougher fight than expected for in a lot of people's opinions. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, look, I think, he's coming off the back of we had a great performance against David Avanesian in July after a long time out the ring. He'd obviously fought Karen 18 months before, something like that. Won every round against him. And I think probably tough to get look, he's not going to make excuses, but tough to get motivated for a fight when you know what you've done before. Karen came with a completely different game plan this time and actually brought a fight, and it made it an entertaining fight. Much more entertaining than the first time round. But I think, maybe complacency played into it. Maybe it's hard to get motivated to go back into the same fight when you won every round. And again, not making excuses. It's boxing. You got to be on your A game every fight because you're judged every fight round. But yeah, look, he got through it. Great chin as well from Karen. Took some big shots in there. Showed a lot of heart. And I think now we got to focus on getting those big fights. The big fights at 147. If they're not there, then move to 154 for the big ones.
Do you know what is going to be next for him? Because we know that he mentioned struggling a little bit with the weight going into this fight. So could his days at 147 be up and it is looking at the 154 move now?
I think if he can't get unifications at 147, then he'll move to 154 for world title fights. I believe that will be the plan. If we can't deliver those, so let's see how things go over the next couple of weeks, next month or so, and then we can look at what can be delivered. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about a Virgil Ortiz fight potentially at 154. There's always going to be the talk about Terence Crawford as well. Yeah, I do think when you have a bit of a performance like that, it brings a lot more names out. People weren't screaming his name down. He has a semi-par performance, and everyone's saying, "I'll take him on." Ryan Garcia's saying, "I'll move up. I'll take him on for the 147 title." So, in some ways, it's good because it means there's more opportunities and people willing to take that chance.
And then just another fighter on the undercard, obviously it was called the Two Kings, and the other king on the card, Jesse Bam Rodriguez, another statement performance, stopping a man who'd never been stopped before. What do you want to see Bam Rodriguez do next?
Special fighter. He's just 24 years old, and to see what he's already done in the sport at such a young age, he's got to be in that pound for pound top 10 now with the performances, without argument. He wants to get in that top five next, and I think he will do. I think, it's quite amazing to see a fighter like him who just wants big fights. He's not interested in voluntaries or like easy touches. He literally just wants the challenge. He'd rather wait for the big fights than take less meaningful fights. Guevara was always, we felt like would be a tough test, but he went in there and he dominated against him. In an amazing performance. He just seems to get better and better and better. And I think for him, it's all about the unifications. There will always be the talk of an Inoue fight at some point. How realistic is that? And I believe it happens. I believe it happens at some point in his career. I don't think he's going to be someone who's in the sport for another 10 years. I think he just wants to take all the biggest challenges and, get everything done in the next 3 or 4 years. And you have to respect that, because there's not a lot of people calling out the big fights and the big names back to back.
And another fighter on the
Chocolatito
card.
as well, by the way, another great fight could be there for him. They're both the only struggle there, obviously, both involved with Taken and Mr. Honda. So in the past hasn't been spoken about too much, but that's a huge fight if that can happen.
And another fighter on the card. I do just want to quickly get a word on Khil Co suffering the first professional defeat of his career in what was a very, very tough fight. Have there been any initial discussions with Khalil, first of all?
Yeah, we saw him afterwards. I think, look, the frustrating piece with Khalil is probably like I don't think he went in there prepared, honestly. Just got a bit, like from a training camp perspective, I don't think he'd he was fit enough. In the fourth round, he was in. Look, it was a grueling fight, and he showed a lot of heart in there as well. And kept coming. But I don't think he prepared himself the way he could have done. I just got to be honest. So, and I think he's got all the talent in the world, but if you don't put the work in and the effort, it's never going to be easy. And boxing's a tough, tough sport. So, like, yeah, you can have all the talent, but if you haven't done the work in the build up, so let's see what he wants to do next and go from there.
And just moving away from Philadelphia and just looking at obviously some of the big news. I'd say the biggest bit of news we've had is a statement put out by Conor Benn saying that he has been cleared following a hearing with NAPD. First of all, will the full verdict be shared with the public?
Look, I think, that's something for the NADP, the process they go through around what the detail that is shared. They've obviously come out with a statement to say the case is fully dismissed. Obviously this is people ask Conor to provide everything, right? And go through the process with UKAD, which obviously operate for the British Boxing Board of Control in relation to all doping matters in the UK. UKAD that then use the National Anti-Doping Panel to do that for them. It's an independent panel who are specialists. They do this week in, week out across not just boxing, but a whole host of sports. Everyone asked him to share all the information to come up with a final conclusion. He's done that. And I feel like people will never really be happy. You only have to look at the comments of a lot of people. And I said this the other day, you can look at the way, I think you can go back and look at the way things were dealt with or the things that were said, etc., and say, I don't think it was all dealt with in the right manner. You can say that. That's an opinion. You can be right or wrong, but I don't question that people can say that. I think now the reality is he's done what people have asked. He's gone through the full process, shared every bit of information, and NADP have dropped the case, and there's been no suspension. And that's what they're there to do. They're an independent body who are there to make those decisions. So we could all look at a 500-page dossier of information or whatever it is. We wouldn't have a clue what we were looking at. He's done what you asked him to do. He went to the people who know what they're talking about with it. I don't know about it. You probably, I don't know, unless you're a specialist within the field, don't know about it. But it's kind of like a never-ending story where people want more and more and more. Where other people have been through this same process and they go, well, I want to see the paperwork behind this, because you wouldn't have a clue what you were looking at. In truth, 99.9% of people wouldn't have a clue I wouldn't have a clue what I was looking at. But he's done what you asked him to do. He's gone away. And it's kind of like, now, let's just draw a line under it and say, I wasn't happy with the way he dealt with or the way Matchroom said this. That's all fine. You can have an opinion on that. But you can't have an opinion on whether or not he's dealt with the matter now, because he's done exactly what was asked.
If you are able to reveal anything, do you know what evidence was presented that cleared Conor Benn?
I can't reveal. I wasn't in the hearing myself. I wasn't involved in the legal process throughout. All I can say was everything was presented. This wasn't just on a piece of jurisdiction. This was the whole case was presented, and thus the result was given. And there wasn't anything not shared in there. It was all presented. They went through everything and they came to this conclusion.
And then obviously we've seen that UKAD and the board do have a 21-day period where they can appeal. Do you expect the board or UKAD to appeal the decision?
Look, I don't want to. I think, like I've said in every other interview, I think Eddie said to say it's all about trying to move forward in a positive manner and say, look, this process has played out over a long, long time. A lot of money's been spent by everyone, and now let's try and move forward in a positive manner. Look, anything's possible, but I hope now sort of we'll just be able to get things going. The NADP have made their decision. That's why they're there as an independent body and put in place by UKAD, So hopefully they would accept the decision and result that's been given.
And obviously saying that, I presume, or will you or Conor himself be applying to get him a license with the board now so he can continue his professional career in the UK?
Whether it's a license, he's obviously licensed with the American commissions that he had the fight, so the Texas Commission. Whether or not he has a British license is one thing. There's a lot of fighters, there's a lot of British fighters who don't have British licenses, or British Boxing Board of Control licenses. Every fight he is involved in the UK would have to be approved, obviously, by the British Boxing Board of Control. So whether he has an international license, just like Tyson Fury does, and as an example, and fights under that license, I couldn't tell you right now. But obviously, we'd have to apply if there's a fight in February, January, whatever it is, for that particular fight for him to fight.
Then right now, where can he fight in terms of what regions? All of them.
Anywhere in the world. There's no suspension, but obviously you have to go through like anywhere, any fight. If I'm in New York now and you want to have a fight in New York, you obviously have to apply for that fight to take place. So but there's no restriction on him fighting anywhere in the world right now.
What fights do you want to look at getting Conor Benn back into now?
The biggest fights possible. He was talking about the 147 fights. He obviously is interested in the winner of the Barrios fight. Jaron Ennis, he's talking about. He was at the show on Saturday watching him. The Eubank fight is obviously a fight that everyone wants to see. So look, there's so many options out there. He's in a great place. He's actually got more options than I think anyone else right now. Because he's a big name. He's probably one of the biggest names in the sport now because of what he's been through. And I said the other day, every interview that's been done over the last 2 years, nearly, there's been a question about Conor Benn. His name has been out there. So I think he's in a great place and, excited about what's next. But all I can say is whatever is next is going to be a massive fight.
What are the chances that we can see Eubank versus Benn in, let's say, the first half of 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I've had discussions with his team, with Chris's team. On Sunday, I spoke to them. So, I'm confident we can make that fight. Whether it's next, whether it's the one, let's see. But I'm very confident we will see that fight. It's a huge fight for the sport, and one that I've spoken about a lot over the last 2 years. I've put a lot of effort into making it the first time around, and it's something that I think is too big not to see. So I want to make it happen personally, and hopefully we can.
One thing that I've been asking a lot of people in boxing when doing these interviews is, do you feel the perspective of the fight has changed? That in the sense of the first fight, it was all about that family pride and what their fathers had done in the ring. But due to what has happened over the last 2 years, it seems there's been a bit of a switch, and it's not fully lost that family pride, but it has become a lot more about Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn themselves, and it seems a lot more of a personal rivalry now. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, look, 100%. I think you only have to look at what's gone on now over the years and where we are, where we sit right now. There is a personal rivalry there, and at the start, you know, it was something that was created off the back of their fathers and the history they'd had. Obviously, look, I'm sure they grew up and it was like complete two different ends of the spectrum, but I think there's a lot more of a personal dislike now between the two of them. And it's an even bigger fight than it was the first time around.
And then just lastly on Conor Benn, obviously we know that it's been over 2 years now since that original failed drug test in the fight week to the original fight with Eubank. What has been so different about this case, and what is we see failed drug tests a lot more often than what we'd like to see in boxing, but what has made this one so different that it has been such a big talking point throughout the whole process?
I think the fact it was just such a big fight, in all honesty. There was so much hype around the fight. It was one of the biggest fights we'd seen in the UK for a long time. And, I think that added to it and it was just mainstream news and it never went away. And I think like I say, I think we've all learnt a lot from it. And did we do everything completely right in terms of did we make all the right decisions or say the right things at the right time? Maybe not. And that's the joy of life is that you learn in everything you do day in, day out. And this was a situation we'd never been in before. And, we, like I say, we took a lot from it, learned a lot from it. And I think Conor is an emotional character as an individual, and no one can quite understand what the last 2 years has been like for him. And I don't think even because we're very different characters. For example, myself and Conor, and I'm very sort of, I'm very everything I say is not doesn't always take the emotional edge. It doesn't always work with someone who can have an emotional side because everything I say is very logical. For example, and you forget that you're dealing sometimes, I'm just being honest, forget that you're dealing with an individual who's going through something that you can never imagine what it's like at 25 years old. And I think he was going through a time that you should never, no one should experience. And he always stayed confident in his position and never wavered when other people in similar positions would have taken a way out, would have said, he was always like, I didn't do this and I'm going to prove myself. And he's done that, and that's taken 2 years. And would there have been a quicker route? Maybe. Yeah. But he's done what he wanted. He's proven his self, and that there's been a price to pay for that, and I'm sure mentally, financially, but it was always important to him. And now he can get on with, he's a young guy still, he can get on with his career. But, he was dealt with very differently, I'd say, to other people. But it's all about now, as I say, moving on in a positive manner. And, you can spend so much time looking back at things and saying this was wrong, that was wrong. But now it's about, let's just move forward and get things going.
Absolutely, and just moving away from all this talk about Conor Benn, another big bit of news that we got last week was Frank Warren and Queensberry Promotions are going to be joining yourselves in Matchroom on the Zone. It's a very exciting time for British boxing. First of all, how excited are you guys to share the same broadcaster as Frank Warren?
Yeah, look, I think it's great. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for the subscribers of DAZN. Having extra content on there. I think they've got 180 fight nights now a year on the DAZN platform, and it really is the home of boxing. When we made a move to DAZN 6 years ago, I think in the US, 3.5 years ago in the UK, and we took not a leap of faith because we believed in it, but it was a big jump. And people were saying, it's an app, it's there, and we believed it was the future, just like the way people digest content, not just in sport, but across everything now. We believed in the platform. And, was it a big jump back then? Yeah, sure. Coming from Sky, who we'd been with for 30 years. But like I say, we believe in it. And you cannot argue now that DAZN is the home of global boxing. Look at every show they've got week in, week out. And yeah, it's great times for the sport. It's great times for our business and the DAZN platform. And long may it continue. And I think it's going to make it even better, being able to make great fights between promoters as well. We saw with that Liam Davis Shabazz Masood fight, that was a spectacular fight, and that was about just making great nights whichever promoter it is. Well, look, we're always going to be competitors, just like a lot of businesses are, but it doesn't mean you can't do good business and make things make sense.
So you kind of answered the next question, but I was going to say, will we see a lot more of those co-promoted shows like what we saw with Liam Davies and Shabazz Masood, where while it was a Queensberry promoted show, you guys were still getting acknowledged in the build-up? Are we going to see a lot more of them now that you guys share the same broadcaster?
I think if the fights are there, you'll see it. You've seen how big the 5v5 was that we did in Saudi. Hopefully we can do another one of those. And yeah, for sure. I think, like I say, that would definitely be the aim if the right fights are there.
And then just moving away from this, Joe Gallagher did an interview with us at Seconds Out a couple of weeks back now, not just last week actually, talking about the way how Boxer have treated their fighters, in particular his fighter Natasha Jonas, for such little activity throughout 2024. Obviously Natasha Jonas only with the one fight back in January. What do you make of these comments coming out from Joe Gallagher blasting Boxer?
Yeah, look, I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about the situation, but I think uh, it's probably a frustration of sort of not getting the opportunities. But Natasha obviously left Matchroom, joined Boxer. I think at the start it was all happy days, and I think after a while, where they sign so many fighters, you get too many obligations, and it gets tougher and tougher to get fighters out. I don't really, I don't really want to talk from that perspective because the only person who can say it is Joe Gallagher, Tasha Jonas. They're the only people who know the reality of it, and I'm sure Boxer and Ben. Now, look, we've had fighters say things in the past about us as well, and there's always two sides to every story. And I'm not saying that here, but like, you know me, I've said enough things about Boxer and Ben in my time. But sometimes it's better to, when you don't know all the information, better to keep your mouth shut. So I'll do that for now.
Fair enough. Obviously, we know that Boxer's current deal with Sky does expire soon. What do you think will happen come the end of it?
I'll give you my opinion
Yeah.
without any facts. I don't. I struggle to see how, on what planet, Sky would renew their deal. Quite honestly, with them, and I said this the other day, and this is my opinion. If I was looking at it if I was a television executive or whatever they want to be called, looking at it and deciding where are we spending our money, what are we investing in, you have to look at the Boxer stable and go, don't get me wrong, they've done some great fights over the last 3, 4 years, but they've been paid a lot of money. They've had a huge investment both financially and from a PR standpoint from the Sky machine, that maybe wasn't always there when we were there with boxing. And that's just the reality of it. I think they haven't built any stars that you'd be looking at and saying, we must renew this deal. And I think you look at the names, Ben Whittaker is a star, but they've mismanaged him completely. And the likes of the Liam Cameron piece, now they need to rebuild him from a boxing perspective, which means he isn't going to be a pay-per-view fighter, pay-per-view star for a few more years. Not saying he can't be, by the way, but I'm saying they've mismanaged the building of him, and have, I think, messed up his career, quite honestly, for the early part. Not saying forever, by the way. Fraser Clark, I love Fraser Clark, but now he has to rebuild. He's not going to be in those big pay-per-view fights just now. And again, with Fraser, it's a bit like, look at Daniel Dubois. Everyone writ him off when he got beat by Joe Joyce 7 years ago, and look what he's gone on to do. So it's not the end by any means with these fighters. It's just a fact of you're buying something here and now. So as Sky, for example, you're buying a product now and you need success straight away because you've invested for 4 years. So you don't want to go and invest for another 4 years to then be like, oh, now we've got to do another 4 years and we're still, only now. So we're 8 years in and what have we got for it? Adam Azim, tremendous fighter, great performance against O'Hara Davis, but he's not a star yet. He did 180,000 viewers off the back of the football, 90,000 peak, I think it was. That's not superstar numbers. Who else? Caroline Dubois, brilliant fighter, not a star. And I think fighters that they've built who are, like Callum Simpsons sold 7,000, 8,000 tickets, I think, when he fought in the summer. No one's heard about him since. So do I think Sky renew? Personally, no. But who knows? Boxing's a crazy sport.
What do you believe would happen with those fighters? For example, obviously, you'd like to think that Ben Shlom has said to them when approaching them that you're going to get this TV deal, but if there is no TV deal, that's going to be breaking whether it's a legal promise in the contract or just something he said to him. But if we are to see Boxer and Sky part ways, what does that mean for all those fighters that he's involved with?
I don't know. I don't know the terms of their contracts. I couldn't tell you. I think it's hard though to go and the reality of the situation. It's hard then to go and get a new TV deal off the back of getting dropped by Sky. If he was to get dropped by Sky, it's very difficult because for the last 4 years he called it the self-proclaimed biggest platform in boxing, which I'm not questioning how big Sky. Like we were there. It's not we chose to leave Sky. Do you know what I mean? Like we could have stayed and carried on. So I'm not questioning the platform of Sky whatsoever. Obviously, you'd be stupid to do that. But if you can't make a success of it on there, how are you going to make it? Like when you've said all this, how are you going to make a success of it anywhere else? So individual fighters, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Only a fighter could tell you what their situation is. But I don't know. He might stay with Sky. They might extend in some other form. They might carry on and say we'll do X number of show or we'll do a non-exclusive. I don't know. Or they may carry on doing what they're doing. But I think, it's a very difficult position if they don't.
And then just moving away from this last topic, this weekend in Texas, we see a fight that even though I'm a young 18-year-old man and I may have seen the rise of Jake Paul, I still struggle to believe that he's actually going to be sharing a boxing ring in a professional fight against Mike Tyson this weekend. But like you said earlier, boxing works in magical ways, crazy ways at times. What do you make of this fight between the two?
I think it's mad that it's happening, really, quite honestly. But, we've questioned a lot of things over the years and then they seem to happen. So you can't read too much into boxing. Nothing really surprises you. I think I'd love to see a Mike Tyson KO, but Is it going to happen? Who knows? He's 58 years old, is he?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Interesting. That's all I'll say.
What do you make? Obviously, I spoke to Danny Connor this morning, former Southern Area champion. He said things need to be asked to these sanctioning bodies who are approving a fight for Mike Tyson at 58 years old to have a professional fight. Do you think something does need to be looked into, especially after the health scare that led to them having to postpone the first original date?
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that. I think it's wild that it's being approved as a real fight, quite honestly. But again, so many things happen in this sport, you know, and that's the commission have done that. It's not a sanctioning body, for example. It's the commission would have agreed that. Um, but I don't know. I don't can't read too much into it.
Obviously, looking at the undercard, though, there is a great fight. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, too, a fight that was a fight of the year contender back when they first shared the ring. Something that could have easily headlined its own event again, but a very special occasion here on such a big card. Um, what was the reason for letting Katie take this opportunity rather than holding out and trying to get it as your own headliner?
Look, it was a huge opportunity for a great payday, and that's where we always say we're not standing in the way of fighters and huge opportunities. If it makes sense to do it, then happy days. We've been with Katie since day one. We've been on an amazing journey with her. She's completely changed the sport. And she's probably been three events which I think rank in probably my top 10 events of being involved in. And those two Chantel Cameron fights, that Amanda Serrano fight, the just the atmosphere, the fight night, everything around it, what was created was so special. So she'd been a big part of the matchroom business and journey. And like I say, it's about delivering the biggest possible opportunities. And that's what was done here. It's a massive fight. It's a great fight the first time round, and I'm sure this will be no different.
What would be next for Katie Taylor if she is to be victorious on Saturday night?
We've been talking about it. There's not tons of like she's beaten the majority of people. Is the Chantel Cameron fight a big fight still? Yes. Potentially as a trilogy. There's a number of fights out there. It depends what she wants to do with weight as well. Moving forward with the belts. So, but it's kind of like she's done so much in the sport. And there's not 20 names you can reel off and say here's the options. Probably two or three. So it'll be for her to decide, what she wants to do and when enough's enough.
Well, Frank, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for your time today. I do appreciate it. And I think I'll catch up with you in Birmingham at the end of the month.
See you there. Look forward to it, mate.
Cheers, Frank. Thank you very much.